All right, you guys holding in there? You good? All right. Sharon Klein from the University of Maine. Sharon is an assistant professor in the School of Economics at the University of Maine. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a PhD in Engineering and Public Policy from Carnegie Mellon University. Prior to her career in higher education, Sharon worked as a high school environmental systems teacher in Quito, Ecuador. Quito? I'm sorry. Ecuador for 2 years, a middle school science teacher in San Diego, California for 3 years, an environmental technician in San Diego for 1.5 years, and an AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps volunteer in the southeast region of the U.S. for 1 year. I like the time frames because it's really important to know that you can move. I'm serious, like it's really, like no one stays in one job anymore, and it's really important to see how you build all of that up. Sharon and I are really good friends, so I'm just giving her a hard time, but I think it's really important to show that you don't stay in one place and you learn from it. Moving on, Sharon's research and teaching are multidisciplinary in nature, centering on the technical, economic, environmental, and social trade-offs inherent in sustainable energy decision-making. She is interested in all sustainable energy options, but has a keen interest in solar energy research, completing her PhD dissertation on the engineering, economic, and environmental trade-offs associated with using thermal molten salt energy storage and dry cooling in concentrated solar power plants, and more recently, assessing the social and economic benefits and costs of community-based solar initiatives. Sharon and her colleagues have created the first U.S. community renewable energy database, a central location for sharing information on community-based renewable energy projects, and that is at www.communityenergyus.net. And Sharon, I asked her for her inspiration, and she got interested in science from a Rainforest Action Network brochure that was sent to her house in the 6th grade, which I think is awesome.
Thank you. Tonight I'm going to be introducing you to the role of 4 different sciences in solar energy research. So when we think about solar energy, a lot of times we think about solar PV or photovoltaics on rooftops, or giant utility scale arrays of solar photovoltaics like this. But solar thermal can also be on rooftops, or we can also have solar thermal arrays that are huge like this, that are big mirrors, called concentrated solar power. Tonight, I'm just going to be focusing on solar PV with the limited time I have, because it's the most common in Maine. Solar PV can take 2 main forms. There's actually a few other forms also, but today I'm going to focus on the crystalline forms. There's monocrystalline and polycrystalline. And the monocrystalline cells are formed from a single silicone crystal, while the polycrystalline cells are formed from many fragments of silicone melted together. While the mono cells are more efficient and also, I feel like I'm really loud. While the mono cells are really efficient and last longer and have some other benefits, the polycrystalline cells are more cost effective. And I forget what benefits they have, sorry. I'll get back to that. They're the most common also. So how does the solar cell work? Solar PV cells have 2 layers of silicone that are sandwiched between glass and metal. And the silicone element itself has 4 outer electrons that help to form stable crystals. So silicone is a semiconductor, which means that it can conduct or it can insulate. And so when silicon is bonded with an element with 1 less outer electron or 1 more outer electron, it can form an unbalanced structure that can help to form an electric current. So when silicon is bonded with boron, it forms p-type silicone, which is a positive charge because of lack of electrons. When it is mixed with phosphorus, it forms n-type silicone due to an excess of electrons. And so when we put these 2 layers together, some of the holes and some of the electrons come together and they form a barrier that keeps the n-type and the p-type areas separate, and until the solar energy hits this junction right there. So when the sunlight hits that junction, the holes in the electrons start to move around and get excited. And when we hook this up to an electric current, we can start to have the electrons in the holes move around in a more stable fashion to produce electricity. So to actually make this work in a home, you need an inverter because this produces direct current electricity. And so the inverter will convert that direct current electricity to alternating current that can be used in a household or a business. Most of our PV installations are grid-tied, but unfortunately that doesn't help us in a power outage. If you're grid-tied, you're still going to not be able to use your solar array when the power goes out. And so you would need an off-grid system or a hybrid system in order to do that. Those are more expensive, but they are starting to slowly become more common as the cost of residential batteries and electric vehicles comes down. So one of the main environmental benefits of solar PV is that it reduces greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change, but it also reduces a lot of other air and water pollutant emissions associated with fossil fuel combustion. It also has a lot of advantages over other renewable energy types. It doesn't have any moving parts, so it doesn't kill birds, bats, or fish. It also doesn't have a high-energy laser beam like concentrated solar power that vaporizes birds and requires clear-cutting deserts. It also doesn't clear-cut forests or compete with food supply like biomass can. It also doesn't use water in the power production like thermoelectric power plants do. But how much does it cost? So the simple payback period is the ratio of installation costs to annual energy savings, where the installation cost is discounted to 70% because of a federal energy tax credit that we have. In Bangor, if we do out this equation, it takes about 8 years to pay back a solar PV residential system. That doesn't account, though, for time value of money or other variations that happen over time. So a cash flow analysis is a more detailed approach to figuring out the costs and benefits of the solar energy system. Oh, man. Way slower. Thank you.
So could a house be designed to be direct current only?
It could be.
I mean, most aren't, obviously, but if somebody were building a house off the grid, could they build a direct current house where they didn't need the inverter?
The issue is more the appliances that we use in our home that need alternating current. And so if we had, I mean, there are more and more, I think, appliances that are starting to use direct current slowly, but we're pretty much an alternating current society. So you wouldn't have as much to plug in that would be, you'd still need some sort of conversion to alternating current to run those appliances.
How was all of this discovered, being able to get energy out of the rays from the sun?
Oh, that's a great question that I don't have an answer to. Maybe one of you out there does. But it was discovered a long time ago, more than 100 years ago, much more, so.
So what's happening with community-based solar?
Oh, thank you so much. So community-based solar can mean a bunch of different things, but as you can see up here, and this is one area of my research right now that I'm studying, it can mean individuals or businesses coming together to get a reduced price on solar installations, like Solarize campaigns. Anybody participate in the Greater Bangor Solarize campaign last year? Or interested in it? Because there might be another one up and coming. It can also mean that so that would be individuals putting it on their own homes. It can also mean individuals buying into a solar array that's off-site, that's bigger than what they could put on the rooftop, or maybe they can't put it on the rooftop, so they buy into something off-site that's a community solar farm or shared solar. It could be a multi-unit building like apartments or condos that buy into the same solar array, or it could be people helping to finance solar on like a church or a school or a municipality or something like that.
As the technology for this grows, what is the incentive to invest in it now rather than getting it in 2 to 5 years when it's more cost effective?
So, good question. There's a lot that goes into the answer to that. Okay, I do have a little bit of time. So solar has actually been around for a really long time, and the technology itself hasn't changed that much, but the production processes have become more efficient to drive down the cost. So a lot of people think that the the reductions in costs that we've seen are getting close to the maximum reductions in costs that we're going to see. And actually in recent years, it's been fluctuating a little bit, sometimes going down and sometimes going up because of different political, I was going to talk a little bit about some of the politics, but some of the different, I don't have anything up there for that, but some of the different political situations, so like trade wars with China and trying to put tariffs on the panels that are coming in and that kind of thing. Net metering changes in policy can also affect the cost effectiveness of solar. So I think, to answer your question, it's hard to say. If it makes sense for you now, then now's a good time to do it because you don't know, like, policies could get more supportive. It's unlikely that we're going to see drastic changes in the cost per watt of the technology. And the U.S. Department of Energy has been spending a lot of time reducing what are called the soft costs, but those could still come down. But really the policies are in place right now to support it, except maybe not with state-level policies in some of the states like Maine. In the future, we might see more supportive state-level policies in Maine. But we do have quite a few that are supportive, like community-based net metering and our net metering policy. So, sorry, someone sat down because I was too long-winded.